Hello there. Welcome to Fate Mag Radio, the online voice of Fate Magazine. I am Kat Hobson, your host. And before we go a minute further, I want to tell you that I celebrate Christmas, so Merry Christmas from me. But whatever you celebrate, whatever matters to you, I hope that you have a beautiful season full of family and love. And if you don't have immediate family, I hope you have family, because I know that it's tough to be alone at this point in the year. I've been there. I have been far away from my family when just about everything happened. It makes it tough, right? But just know that everybody is loved. And thank you so much for joining us tonight. This is going to be an interesting show. I have with me tonight Chris Houston. Chris is one of the most meticulous researchers I know. We have been doing our shows for about the same length of time. He is really, really good at what he does. I am going to go ahead and bring him on, and I will let him help me tell you a little bit more about himself. He is just brilliant. And without further ado, Chris Houston, come on here with me.
Hey, guys. I have a sign right back behind me that I don't know if you can see it or not. Right back there, that's kind of similar to Area 51. It's the X-Files sign that was given to me, believe it or not, from cast members from the X-Files. That they sent me a poster, and they were going to sign it, but they didn't. So I ended up with an autographed picture that's in the other room from one of them. But I love the "I want to believe" sign, because I've been one that's been researching aliens for almost 25 years now. So,
yeah. Well, Paranormal Truth and Reality, Hi Val, is one of my favorite shows. And, well, one of the things that I just love about you, and sometimes it makes me crazy because we're both very strong personalities, but is the fact that you don't present something that you haven't researched.
Mm-hmm.
And I appreciate that, because, there's so many times that people just go off half-cocked. And there's all the big brouhaha and bluster, and it's very tough to reel that back in once it's out.
That's got a lot to do with media and TV, because even though you've been on a few shows, I've been on a few shows, and we know a lot of the cast from a lot of these shows. We also know that most of these people are kind of more, how do you put that politely, more drama and actors and hearsay than they are really into the thick of things and actually working with governments and so forth. I mean, I've spent 35 years in research, at least 15 of those working as a contractor for the Department of Defense, the FBI, had the privilege of meeting the CIA director at one point, one of the CIA directors. And I can tell you a lot of what they tell you on TV is just absolute nonsense. If you were to actually do what these guys do, you would get arrested in a New York minute and disappear. It's just the way it is. You sign disclosure, 1,000 disclosures. Even what I tell you guys today, I'm very limited on what I tell you. I actually have a list of things sitting right here on my desk, because I'm told you can say this, you can say this, you can say this, you can't say this, you can't say this, you can't say this. If you do, you're going to get arrested and we'll shut you down.
I would hate to lose your show, Chris. Don't do that. But hey, Jeremy York. But it's really interesting, because this whole pay no attention to the man behind the curtain, it's a lot of I worked with military people from a different side. I worked for a company. I was the management for a company that did esprit de corps items. So I would be talking to different people who were still in the hierarchy, but they were the purchasing power, getting, the coins designed and stuff like that. But, which, by the way, I do have a unit coin.
Cool.
So, yay. But, it really is interesting, because there's so much happening right now. And when I posted asking if people wanted to or would be interested in a show about the drones, your perspective is different. than the average person on the street because of what you do and because of your background. And I can come at it from the side of the questions that I'm getting, and they're legion. I mean, there's so much fear, really.
Well, there should be in a way, and why do I say there should be? Well, first off, which you have seen in the House and Senate if you've been paying attention to it, and several of the senators, as well as the military advisors and so forth. When you build something that is small enough to go under radar with any form of stealth or reflective technology, this means it can literally fly anywhere in your space, and you have no freaking idea how to find it unless the lights are on.
Or stop
Now,
it.
that's a key to remember, by the way, guys, because FCC's one regulation that the military government can't break is identification control, which means that you have to have the lights on.
Mm-hmm.
And the only time you turn the lights off is if you're in a special operative situation that you've already informed the FCC about, and their job is to not tell you that that operation is going on.
Exactly.
So this is why you're going to get some information where people are saying that there's nothing nefarious going on, as an example from the president. These are harmless. They're not danger to the public. You don't have to worry about it. There are reasons those statements are coming out, and you're going to see those reasons for those statements within the next 3 to 4 months, actually. I suspect Donald Trump's probably going to start releasing this information right after January 20th when he takes office. It's not being released right now because they're putting the push on to Donald Trump. I can tell you that because we know that. I mean, they're not going to tell you squat right now. The offices don't give a shit. They're on their way out. Excuse my term. I hope that doesn't offend anybody when I use a couple of cuss words.
I'm just so offended. I can't believe you said that on my show. Oh my gosh, Chris. But seriously, we have talked, well, we haven't talked in some time, but I follow you, right? And the way that this stuff is supposed to work is that what's not being said is there's no clear and present danger. And that's why people, the lack of information, even down to that, has the average person on the street kind of jonesing a little bit, right? And that there's no nefarious means. We're being told that this isn't a danger to you, but we don't know what it is, but it's not a danger. And the terminology that is being used is such a subterfuge that it's just ridiculous. And
unfortunately, some of that is because of contracts and agreements. And I know a lot of people don't know how things operate, but when you're in a special operative where you're testing, building, or designing anything, there are a bunch of contracts and releases, and we don't do it ourselves anymore. So what we do is we go out to corporations and we say, hey, we want this.
Yeah.
And that's usually overseas. Sometimes it's here, or a combination of here and overseas. Now, when that happens, you get agreements in place, and the agreements state you're not allowed to say anything. You're not allowed to do this. It's a breach of contract. It'll cost this much. We won't return the machinery, blah, 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 blah. A prime example of this that I can explain to you a little bit of is the research and design before Russia ended up causing problems in the Ukraine. Now, when Donald Trump was in control, there were a form of about 15 or 20 agreements throughout Russia, the Ukraine, and several other places to design new weaponry and new equipment. One of these was with the United States Navy, and they did successfully produce this equipment. You're going to see more about that equipment to answer your questions on these drones within the next month and a half. In fact, Facebook, Microsoft, and social media has already slowly started to release some of this stuff to ease your fears a little bit. What I can tell you is it's not aliens. There are no aliens running around with drones.
That. I am. But seriously, so we've ruled out aliens. We've ruled out not much else. So
Uncle Joe.
I know, right? So mine is somewhere there. There he is. But one of the things that I have just found to be so interesting in all of this, and I know that you're going to enlighten as much as you can. When I posted that about would anyone be interested in a show on these drones, it was it was amazing. The private messages I got and Messenger, the emails I got were just like, what can you tell us? What can you tell us? And that's when, I mean, because I really appreciated when you reached out to me and said, have me on. And I'm like, well, we haven't done that in a hot minute. You come on, Chris. So, you know.
I kind of had to, because when they first started showing up, it was a national concern. I mean, I'm not going to lie about that.
Well, for people that are not in the know, it is still a national concern.
And it was a major concern for me. I mean, I'm small on the totem pole at this point, although I am picking up a couple of more serious job positions here in Ohio once transition happens. It's still a concern. If you think about it, as I did on my show, when you can create something that can be launched, and actually you can retrieve the information without even retrieving the machinery, and you can sink it in the water, and most drones, once they go underwater, they're just gone, right? But you've already got all the information uploaded from 150,000 miles away. And you can operate these things, guys, up to 10 to 20 to 100,000 miles away. The United States military operates their drones, which are actually prehistoric technology until recently, at least almost 75 to 100,000 miles away. We operate some of these drones from the United States of America that we have used in Israel and other countries. So it's easy enough if you can get something small enough to invade a country, and all you need is one arm, just one.
Yeah.
And you've got a problem. And if it's armed with the wrong thing, it can take out a city or a state. However, they can be utilized for the right things too. With the right infrared technology, the right radio seeking technology, the right radioactive seeking technology, drones can be useful to find a lot of things. The New York City Police Department, Chicago City Police Department tested a few things. They can literally, with infrared and a few other cameras, they can spot armed drug dealers and take them down without harming a cop.
Well, that is a useful technology.
Yeah, so in the right hands, they can be used well. In the wrong hands, they can be very dangerous. And it's also a scary thing. I mean, from my end, Skynet could very well be a real thing if you take AI and put it in control of all the drones.
Yes, and everybody thinks it's such a great idea to do that. I mean, it's like, oh, look, AI can do all these things. Well, they can do a lot more than what we're being told. And if you've ever watched those movies, I mean, that's not beyond the realm of possibility, because AI, what was it? I heard 10 years would be autonomous.
Well, the scary thing about AI, and I can't remember the doctor's name, but the first doctor that brought it to attention, and he worked in virology, right? Mm-hmm. And his job was to come up with and assess situations to make antivirals for the viruses, to try to be able to stop the virus, and then to determine how quick that virus will adapt for the new virus to come out. Mm-hmm. So he created with his team, which were a bunch of college kids, an AI program that was designed to self-determine how many antivirals could be created to stop something like Corona. And it worked very successfully. It would come up with solutions almost instantly. So he thought, what happens if we reverse this? What happens if we just tinker around with this to figure out if this AI can create the first killer virus? Within 24 hours, it created 16 killer viruses. Within 48 hours, it created 120. Within a week, it had created thousands of viruses that could wipe out the whole world. So in the wrong hands... They turned
that off, right? So, being facetious. But seriously, that is such a concern.
Yeah, in the wrong hands, AI is very dangerous. It's a very dangerous thing, which is why the United States has been working on being the leader in it. Unfortunately, we're not.
Yeah.
But they've been working really heavy with it, and hopefully we do end up with the leader of artificial intelligence, put rules down, because it can be a dangerous thing.
As evidenced by that, trial.
But drones are useful situations, and they're also scary situations when you think about it. And if you arm one drone, it can be a very dangerous thing. This brings us back to earlier this year, where there were a lot of threats and worries that lead up to the statement that happened last week with the gentleman. And that statement was, we did find out that nuclear waste was coming into the United States of America for disposal, and it's disappeared. Now, ironically, this happens around the same time these drones start showing up.
Right.
And this is something you need to think about a little bit. So that everybody is aware, the United States Navy did experiment with the Ukraine and technological projects for surface-dwelling drones that could do a lot of different things. Now, what do I mean by surface-dwelling drones? They're designed to sit on the water for the Navy for retrieval with solar panels and reflective technology on top of them to not be seen unless you drive right up on top of them if you don't have the locator. They recharge. They don't have to go back to base for many, many months because they recharge. They can go drop back down into the water, be undetectable, recharge, come back up, and go back out. They have cameras that can search for radioactivity. They got cameras that can search heat signatures. They are armed when necessary with small missiles that can take out located areas. They do have cannons on them that are very drastic little cannons. I mean, these little guns, it's amazing what they can do. There's a gun.
So that video that I posted of somebody in Jersey running from a drone firing at them wasn't too offbeat.
You can do it.
You can do it.
You can do it, but we do have the capability of having drones the size of a car.
Yes.
And the reason for that is these drones take about $1 to $2 million to build, whether you arm them or not, depending on what you put on them or not. Our drones currently that we're utilizing that are less than 25 or 30 that are active took about $25 million to build and another $15 million a month to maintain when they're being operated. That's a lot of money.
It is a lot of money.
If you can do it for $1 or $2 million and it doesn't need operated and the computer does everything for you, you're damn sure going to try it. The Navy succeeded at it. The Army ordered more. So we do have about somewhere between 100 to 175 drones that are experimental right now that the military is going to tell you more about. They've already started to release it if you haven't paid attention. And next year you're going to hear more about it.
So am I going to have to like go and watch those Terminator movies to figure out how to cope with these drones?
It's a limited computer programming technology. So although it's artificially programmed, it's designed and programmed to do one specific purpose when they're out there. So other than flying in Unity and separating in Unity and doing their job, they can't think on their own at this point. Hopefully that doesn't change.
The AI programming can.
Depending on the programming. Artificial intelligence is not what people think it is. We haven't broke that block yet. There's a building block that Elon Musk has been working very hard at that goes from artificial to human intelligence.
Sentient, yeah.
Sentient being. Now, until they do that, the program does what it's programmed to do. It's just designed to continue to learn in order to better operate that program. That's what makes it dangerous. So if the program's told not to kill, but to search and find, it will find everything in its parameters that it's supposed to, which is scary in itself. But it won't harm or hurt anybody. Now, if it's told to kill you, it's going to kill you.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, when you're dealing with technology, imagine that technology in a robot, in a fully operational, man-sized robot. If you tell it to kill somebody, it's going to keep doing it until it falls apart. So it's a scary thing, and it's not at the same time. But
so it's kind of like the Terminator movies.
Kind of, if it's programmed wrong.
Or right, if you're a bad guy.
Or right, if you're a bad guy.
So
it's important that we keep track of AI technology. It's also important that we keep track of the news and keep an eye on the political situations and everything that's going on right now. I mean, right now, to be frankly honest with you, and the military would agree with this, I know the offices aren't going to shut me down for saying it. The United States of America is in the weakest point in history it ever has been during this transitional phase. We have the weakest army in numbers. We have the weakest weapons. We have the weakest defense forces. And these drones have proven one thing if you paid attention to it for everybody. We also have the weakest defense when it comes to our own area. We have no idea what the hell's going on, right? Senators don't know. You have the Pentagon saying they aren't ours. You have the FBI and the CIA saying, well, we're not going to tell you that, but we are.
They're not technically ours. It's not the military's, but
yeah. Which showed,
this is. But I'm sorry.
Oh, you're fine. It just shows how miscommunicated we are, and we just don't talk to each other.
Well, and it's not, but I mean, this isn't just a U.S. thing. Like,
It's not.
it's not just ours. Our bases overseas are also having these experiences.
Mhm.
So, I mean, they're scrambling what are they? 15s, the F-15Es. Anyway, out of
You have joint
Lakenheath.
efforts working with multiple governments right now in order
Yeah,
to.
Lakenheath, Mildenhall, Thelwell, Bear, Bearford, I think it is. Four
There should be
bases in the UK that
there
are,
should be two countries, if not three countries, working together right now. I don't know if the third one's
yeah.
jumped in yet or not.
But it's just so weird because, but it's our bases,
Well, there's the reason behind that, though I can't tell you.
right?
But the key thing you have to remember here is the government does know more than they're telling you. Yes, but that is because it's an ongoing effort and a joint effort between multiple people to search and locate and find the exact situation that's going on right now for the safety of everybody involved.
So it wouldn't necessarily be for plausible deniability.
No, at this point, it's not. Even though you could use plausible, the plausible deniability factor in here is there are just certain things, as terrible as it seems in the government eyes, there are certain things that the public just shouldn't know until we know more or we have control of any situation. And there's reasoning behind that. If I were to tell you tomorrow that a virus is uncontrollable and out on your streets, then you panic. If you remember COVID-19 at the beginning when it came over here, the CDC, before the politics shut them down and cut it all off,
Right.
and some of the doctors working did tell you it would get under control, but it was a virus that was a worry. And now all of a sudden, believe it or not, when the government took control and released all the other nonsense, we had people in hazmat suits and big trucks raiding the Dollar Trees for all the food they could.
Yeah.
Now imagine if we had something worse than that could happen, but probably won't.
There's a lot of stuff worse than COVID.
You're going to have panic, and you're going to have riots, and you're going to have people on the streets, and you're going to have. And right now, with the government being as weak as it is, and with it being the holidays and so forth, you don't need that type of mess. You just
do not.
don't.
Well, you don't need it even when you're strong and capable.
Exactly.
I'm sorry, but does the void in leadership, I mean, how is that? This is probably not something that can be answered, but with the void of leadership, how is the information gathering and dispersion handled?
When you transition from one president to another, the presidential office is supposed to handle most communications and then share that communications during the last 3 weeks of the transitional process. So in early January, from January 1st to January 20th, the presidential offices, along with the military staff and so forth, they're supposed to exchange that information with Donald Trump and J.D. Vance when they come in. Until then, they're in full control of what they can release and what they can't release. Is it a concern that some things may not be released? Well, that's why Donald Trump had a press conference and was informed by the military ahead of time that he can't comment on. Yes, it's going to be a concern. I mean, you're talking about two offices that hate each other for the past how many years? That have proven they don't communicate and don't want to communicate in a situation where it's necessary for you to most definitely communicate. Because this is not just our concern, it's a concern with at least one, if not two nations, while we already have two other nations in control of massive power in the middle of a war.
Yeah.
So, I don't think it's going to be as big of a deal as it could be, but I mean, Joe Biden's office could be a pain in the ass too. And if they are, then
the Joe Biden's office is based on who the administrator is. Is who's making those decisions, right?
The administrator and then several key staff members that are usually in conglomeration with military that knows what's going on and whatever they're exchanging with the president. Unfortunately, Joe Biden hasn't exactly been the best president in the whole world, so a lot of that exchange just simply didn't happen.
Is there a
one
method?
reason or another.
Is there a method in place when the commander-in-chief is cognitively disengaged?
The first steps in any president that you believe is disengageable is to get medical confirmation at that point before the vice president takes control, and then it's announced to the nation at that point if he doesn't resign. And even if he does resign, sometimes the questions are answered because the House and Senate want to know about it. Is you have your vice president and military advisors basically take control of the government at that point. And then they control it until somebody is assigned. Usually that's a vice president to control those situations. So in the case of something like a military emergency or an emergency or a state of emergency, then you're going to have mostly your generals in control of everything, believe it or not, behind the scenes, because they're the only ones that know. And they're going to be exchanging information with the cabinet and the vice president. And then the cabinet and the vice president are going to be making most of those decisions at that point in time until a new president is assigned.
Is that something that's a high likelihood? Anytime that has it ever happened in the U.S.?
Technically, when Eisenhower got sick.
Yeah. Okay. Is it a possibility now?
It's a very slim window. It's a very, very slim window. And right now, most of the military is supporting and backing Donald J. Trump. So I believe if they pulled a wild card and tried to do something like that, that Trump would still end up being president, because I think the military would just back down and say, screw you, we're not doing it. Because
they would get in trouble for that, or they could get in trouble for that, though, couldn't they? In that short, even with that short window?
Technically.
Okay.
But then again, the Democrats could have technically got in trouble for resulting in forcing an insurrection that they blamed on somebody else. And we do have proof that they coerced it.
Yeah.
They did not set it up. They coerced it. Let's be very clear about this. Democrats try to work within as many legal lines as they can so that they can post blame somewhere else and get away with bloody murder.
That's why they're all attorneys.
In the case of insurrection, this is exactly what they did. They knew what Donald Trump was going to do. They knew he was going to rally the people, and they knew if they encouraged the opposite parties to get in control and reduce the security and defense, that shit would hit the fan. We have proof of that. It's just they wouldn't let us put it out there.
Okay.
Hopefully when he gets into office, that proof will surface, because it is very crystal clear proof.
I'm pretty sure that's going to surface.
I mean, it's very crystal clear proof. There are actually signed documents of some of these people reducing the security, telling the local police that they're not going to get reinforcements from the national military and they don't need it. They can handle it on their own, with documentation from the police chief stating we can't handle it on our own. We don't have enough manpower, and we're already being flooded with trucks of guns that came in yesterday.
Well, that's reassuring.
Yeah, and they covered it all up. And when it was mentioned in these trials, they cut it off very quickly.
Yes,
but the documentation is still there. The proof is still there. So hopefully most of that proof comes out and it gets surfaced, because most people in most of these offices know it's there. They know what's been going on. It's just, unfortunately, you either turn against your own government or you say, okay, well, there's nothing I can do about it. I have to support you anyway. That's the oath we take.
Well, it is, but you don't follow blindly into insurrection.
Well, in their case,
and it was not the Republicans that started the insurrection.
In their case, legally, there wasn't anything that you could do to just take up arms against them.
Right.
You could do what the senators did. You can do what the Republicans did. You can tell the truth and say, look, it is here, and watch it get washed under the rug for 4 more years until you get them out and bring it back up and say, look, these people need to be tried for this.
Yes.
which everybody in offices do. You could resign and say, look, I'm not doing this anymore. In my case, as a government contractor, you can say, I'm just not taking the jobs right now, guys. I'm sorry, but I refuse to work for you. Which is what I did a lot of times. I just refuse to work for you. I'm not going to do it. You and I both know what you guys are doing here, and I get it. I understand you're pulling that business legal card that politicians pull, and you're breaking laws without breaking laws because you can cover your tail, blah 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 blah, and trying to post the blame in other places. Hopefully that the America starts to realize now how crooked politics can be in this process, and we push to make sure it gets cleaned up to where it should be. Because this isn't the first time this crap has happened. It's just the first time most Americans and people overseas have had social media and all this other crap to sit there and look and go, what?
And, you know, it's really, to me, it's been very eye-opening. I love politics. I was a political science major. And I just cannot fathom when I was in the UK earlier in the year. It was amazing because the people there, you know, they have CNN, all the other stuff, and yeah, the wonder of satellite, right? But it was amazing how many people completely felt like, you know, we were just at a loss, and not unrealistically, but it was really, I don't know. I mean, the disinformation was done so very well.
Uh-huh.
And is that something that is that part of what there will be repercussions for?
I would hope the goal to a lot of these new offices that I could get into immigration more than disinformation, but the goal with the misinformation campaigns and technology is fortunately and unfortunately at the same time to take better control of these situations and be able to outlaw some of this stuff and prevent it, because other countries that can be hired, they can actually be physically hired by the United States to do so. They can do it on their own. They can be hired by other countries to do so, have been so perfect at doing this now that we as Americans will adapt so quickly. And it's not just us, it's other countries. It's just in different ways. They've learned so smartly how to do this that we think it ends up being a humor campaign or this campaign or that campaign, but we don't realize when you're opening your Facebook page every day and you're seeing the same shit flash in front of your face, eventually that image and those words and that situation sticks in your head. You begin to believe it.
Yes, that's true.
And that doesn't even count the misdirections. Let's give you one or two pieces of information and then fake the rest of it.
Yeah.
Which
thereby
the Navy's
getting your bona fides in two instances and then tossing them aside for the rest of your career.
Which the Navy and the Air Force has been doing for years. I mean,
absolutely.
We kind of cornered the market on that in the paranormal for at least 20 years.
Yeah. Easily.
Yeah. So it's not something that's not new. It's just today, social media is such a large disease anyway. And I've addressed this a couple of times. I have some psychologists that I'm going to have on my show next year that are going to discuss this. Social media disease is one of the most untreated mental diseases in the world. And it's because we escape. We can be whoever we want. We can see whatever we want. We can believe whatever we want. And it's got to the point to where it affects every other mental disease that's out there, minor to large, to where at least 60% of Americans are a bit, excuse my term when I say this, but we're a bit batshit nuts. Because we don't know what to believe anymore. So we build our own conspiracies and we just run with it.
Well, we build our own reality.
Yeah. And we just run with it. So, and if you have the wrong person in control of that, that's creating a false reality, we start to believe that. And then it becomes dangerous. Because all it takes is one crazy person to pick up a gun or do something dumb.
We've seen that happen.
Yeah.
Recently.
And other governments know this. And even our own government knows this. And they know how to take advantage of it. and that should be stopped.
Yes.
That's why Donald Trump got shot at.
I know. So does everybody else who pays attention. You know, I really don't discuss politics as a rule on my shows because, for one thing, I don't like to put myself out there as far as, well, you should listen to me. This is the way things are. You know, but when you see all of the anger and the angst and the people that have been driven to the point of being suicidal because Trump was elected.
No, I know.
You know, I mean, that's a real thing.
And it's a sad thing. It shows
it is
that
horrible.
social media
Anybody that thinks that because of a political environment, your life isn't worth living, you have no hope for your future. We've had some terrible election processes.
Oh,
and
we've had some terrible presidents.
We have
no matter
had
which
terrible
way you
presidents,
look at it.
But both parties. I mean, there's nobody has a jeopardy or has a monopoly on lunacy or just bad decision-making processes, but or a lack of experience, or so many other things that can create less than thrilling behaviors and decision-making processes.
Well, and when you're looking at it, what we're discussing technically is not politics. I mean, you're noticing I'm not supporting or denying Donald Trump. I'm not supporting or denying Joe Biden. We're talking about the reality of how you're being manipulated.
Yes.
Not necessarily by the politicians, sometimes by the parties, sometimes not by the parties. A lot of times
by the ideologues.
A lot of times it's by foreign entities.
Yes.
Believe it or not.
The manipulation.
That are manipulating the situation. And believe it or not, sometimes both sides, on whether you're Democrat or Republican, are lost in the dark, and you're getting involved in this and you're falling for it too. Yes. which is causing you to fight with this one and this one to fight with this one because of all the misinformation that somebody else fed online to destroy a country. And that's what you're talking about. These misinformation campaigns were designed to destroy the United States of America.
They've been very effective.
They have. As I said, some of these countries have really taken our original design and the Philippines' original designs and the Vietnamese' original designs, and they've combined them all together and created the perfect way to take down a government from inside without doing anything but spending $30 million.
Money. Yeah. All it takes is cash.
Yep. $30 million and some idiot on a computer.
Yeah, pretty much. It's so funny because when the balloon was first going over the country and all these people were like, oh my God, this is a blah, 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 and it's China, and it's, and that's okay. That's fine. And I read a blog that said, I guess that's whatever $1 billion will get you is a free flyover. And I was like, well, I hadn't really looked at it that way, but okay, and that's one of the things that's out there. If you have people that are being compromised, is so weird.
It's easy to compromise the United States of America. Let's take the Chinese balloon as an example. Okay. Most people don't understand that China owns 320,000 acres of land in the United States of America.
Yes.
And they operate on this 320,000 acres of land on a regular basis. That makes billions of dollars a year. And it also goes out to billionaires in the United States that control some of these land accesses and control some of these flight paths and have things coming in and out every day. So how simple would it be to fly that balloon over top of situations like that and still be able to take pictures in other places? Well, some of those acres of land are less than 5 miles in that direction from a military base.
Absolutely. And that's what several governors have been just up in arms about. and trying to limit that. And it seems to just keep getting tossed back over on that pile of stuff to handle later. And it really is an imperative thing to address.
Money. That's why it gets tossed over there.
Yeah.
These billionaires that have access to this land that's producing this, have these roadways over here going here and here and here. They're making money, and they're also supporting the senators in offices right now. That's what most people don't understand. And that money goes to the senator. Then the senator, if he has enough pull, along with 3 other senators, makes that question and that bill go over here into the pile of crap.
Yeah.
And everybody keeps making money. It's a sad thing.
Being compromised.
Yeah, it's a sad thing, but it's always been about money from day one. I know everybody talks about democracy and they say this is the democratic government and so forth.
We are a republic.
We are a republic, and we're a republic that believes in capitalism, believe it or not, because it helps make us money. Yeah. Now, that's also what makes part of our country great. Capitalism also, when given the small amount of socialism, you can be a guy that has a penny tomorrow and be a millionaire next week, depending on how you invest that penny. Nonetheless, it has its downfalls too, and these are some of the downfalls of our belief system.
Yeah. Well, you can't really just come back and say, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Just because I made all this money 6 years ago, you really shouldn't be doing that. So we're going to change the rules now because I have mine," right? That's actually what people try to do sometimes. And I don't know, Chris.
We're supposed to have laws in place that state you can't do that.
I know, right? We actually do have laws on the books that say that you don't do that.
Yeah.
But, diplomatic immunity is a real thing too. So it's an interesting thing.
Rub people's backs this way, and then my friend over there in the back, you see Mr. Bones. Yeah. Rub people's backs this way the right way, and then they rub your backs this way the right way, and then eventually those legal standpoints get overruled because somebody slips in another law and another law and another law. And the Democrats have gotten really good about that. This is why 4 more years from now, you're going to have to fight if you don't want them back.
Yeah.
I mean, I know we're getting political there, but a prime example of that is issue 1 here in the state of Ohio. Issue 1 was addressed as supposedly being an abortion situation. It had nothing to do with abortion situation. It was about voter maps and putting a council together that we don't vote in, that's chosen by other Democrats to control our vote at the end of each election process. And nobody read it, and it passed. So it's going up.
Oh, my.
It's going up. And this is not the only state they did this in, guys. Just so you know, they put it under every gun policy and every abortion policy in every state. You need to pay attention. Now, we're taking it to the Supreme Court right now, and we're fighting it. The Supreme Court thinks that they're going to override it when Trump comes in and so forth. But nonetheless, this is a very serious situation because we've always been a red state. We always vote Republican. And now we're being told that if this law stands, it doesn't matter whether you vote Republican or not. If these 5 people chosen by Democrats at the time decide that it's not going to be a Republican state, it's just not going to be a Republican state. Tough shit.
That is not constitutional.
I agree.
I mean, hello. Holy wow.
And so does the Supreme Court. But there's this little legal thing that says you can put anything you want in a bill, and if the bill passes, if nobody objects to it, blah, 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 you can still do it. And unfortunately, that means even if it's unconstitutional, you can still do it. Just like Mr. Biden saying, yeah, my son broke 1 million laws that should still go to jail and shouldn't be pardoned, but I'm going to pardon them all off anyway.
Yeah.
The pardons are not
for anything even for anything into the future.
Yeah, and the pardons aren't designed to do that. Legally, he's technically not supposed to do that.
Technicalities are the bane of my existence.
They've been mine from time to time, too, because when you're searching for answers in the paranormal, those technicalities either A, get you in trouble, or B, get you told to shut up somewhere along the line, and it pisses you off.
I get told to shut up. So, nicely. And Lori in chat said, always follow the money. Indeed. So, What do you think? When do you think the drone information, such as can be, is going to be revealed?
January, February, March.
When we come into the, I'm going to add something else to that. I have been told by people who have had um, oh, abduction experiences that not everything in the sky is ours. Not everything in the sky is human.
They are correct.
And I've been told specifically the ones that wink out are questionable. Do you think there's any validity to any of that?
Yes. Not everything in the sky is identifiable. Not everything in the sky the United States of America knows, and not everything in the sky in other countries have been identified as being from here or not from here. The only thing that we know is some of the capabilities on some of the things we have spotted from time to time are impossible for us to understand because we didn't design them. Mm-hmm. We can confirm, look, this isn't something that we know about. And this is not just us, this is other countries that will admit to the same thing, and that you'll see consistently now. That's the one thing in disclosures that finally, everybody's going, yeah, well, it's there. We just don't know what the hell it is.
I was curious specifically about the underwater capability because I know you're familiar with the term fast mover, right? Uh-huh. The underwater experiences. But given some of the other stuff, do you think those are all just ours?
No.
Okay.
One of your friends that ended up on my show and your show, he was one of the original guys that operated some of the X-Files, brilliant man, had brought up a very serious thing that you and I had talked about that made me do a lot of research afterwards, and that was asking the question about the Arctic base. Mm-hmm. And look, if you ever have these questions, look for this, and this. It opened up a 10-year research situation on a lot of things that I can't answer about what we know and what we don't know, and how off base we are on certain things when just right down the road is an actual research base we never knew about.
Yes.
And it also opened up a door to some very unique situations that showed to me there's a lot of things that we have no idea why the hell it's there and where the hell it came from. We just know it's been there for God knows how many years, but it is there.
Yeah.
And this is not just in one area, but several areas of the world.
It's global. It really is global.
Yeah.
So I know because, because it has been a long time that we've been doing this, and I started doing UFO conferences and, leaning more toward the scientific side of experiencers and things of that nature. It's really amazing what with abductees and the implants and things like that. It's really amazing the kinds of things that actually really happen with that. But it's also interesting to me the technology that these people report. And it blows my mind because a lot of it is stuff that, it's like with Antarctica. Okay. What we had talked, Antarctica. Why was John Kerry on Antarctica on the day of Obama's second inauguration? He was Secretary of State. He should have been at the inauguration. Mm-hmm. And yet they sent him to Antarctica. And that was during that time period, you remember, when every head of state or a close representative of such, including the Vatican, went to Antarctica. Mm-hmm. And everybody's like, well, why are you doing that? And there was never an answer.
But you're not going to get one.
But Lockheed Martin had a base there. That's who was doing the work. And I got nosy and I just went on their website to see what you had to do to apply to go to work there. Did you do that? Did you see that?
I looked, but I can't really honestly remember.
Well, in order to go and work there, you cannot have your own communication device. You cannot take a cell phone.
That's
You're not taking a camera. You're not taking anything. And all communications would be handled through Lockheed Martin's communication system.
Also, no surprise.
Yes. And so I was just kind of like, what you looking at? You know?
You run into that a lot with top secret bases, though. Area 51 is the same way, guys. I've been
Yes,
to Area 51 twice,
I
and
have.
you are not allowed to bring any communication devices into the system. You are patted down. You are actually, if you go into the first time I went in there, there's series and sectors, right? They actually have them marked off in colors. So one sector is just an admin sector. You can walk in your own suit.
Mm-hmm.
But if you go off of the admin sector, you're actually you get taken over here before you go into the base, and you get reclothed and you take a shower, and then they take you in there, so that they know that you're not carrying any communication devices and everything's 100% secure. So it's not surprised that they use their own communication devices. Yeah. Even Cheyenne Mountain, before it was public knowledge, had its own communications device. You know, when you were in Cheyenne Mountain, you communicated in Cheyenne Mountain with their communication devices. Now it's pretty much obsolete, but
right.
But it's no surprise they would do that. Yeah, it's just the way it is. You know, a lot of this stuff is really secure.
Well, and people, especially, I'm going to get in so much trouble for saying this if my daughters are listening, but this generation is like this whole, well, I want to know, so you have to tell me. And it's like, yeah, you just keep working that. You know, that's not how reality in the grown-up world works.
Especially when you're dealing with the early government, because the government is the reverse of that. They're still in the 1950s. So say that, they say no.
They are, and they have no problem with discipline.
Yeah.
You know, if you're in the military and you step out of line, you will find out just how strong discipline can be. Yeah. It's just stupid. And not the discipline, but the attitude that comes with that causes it's like, it's just insane.
Well, need to know is an important thing when you're dealing with any government, especially with the United States, because we were built on need to know. In other countries, it's not quite need to know. It's if you know, we'll just kill you.
True that.
But need to know here information has been a big deal for God, almost since our birth, but especially for the past 80 years. When we were in the Cold War, it was very, very important. I mean, if you think about it, when you're trying to transport one nuclear scientist over to America that just basically said, I don't want to be here anymore.
Yeah.
It's a big deal. And Oppenheimer had 3 of them on his staff.
Yes, he did.
So,
well, I mean, look at Einstein.
Yeah, and need to know is very, very important because of situations like that. It's also, I want everybody to think a little bit. Let's say tomorrow aliens are real, but let's say they are nefarious.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to know that? Do you really want to know that? And do you want to know that every day I have 12 or 20,000 people that you don't know about that are sitting clear up there somewhere that's keeping you safe because these nefarious bastards want to kill you? Or do you want to live your life and be happy?
When they say ignorance is bliss, I like being blissful if it's the right situation. However, I love what I do, and I love getting information.
Oh, I do too. And, I enjoy it.
Just...
And I like to dig in, and I like to know this stuff. But I understand where some of this is coming from as well. Sure. Because in the wrong hands, information can cause chaos and a breakdown of design that can destroy not only a country, but a world.
Yes. Well, we've had chaos agents working in the U.S. for a while now. And it's really, I don't care. I don't care what anyone's political leanings are. I don't judge my friends based on that, although a lot of people I know do. I I don't. I think that if you see something that is ultimately going to cause havoc in your society, then you have an obligation to just kind of say, you know what? Maybe we should talk more about this and let's have a little bit more truth telling with this. And it's so like the people that want to come here and kill us and not, taking them to your bosom and nurturing them so that they can do more of the damage.
We lost a lot of what made America and the United States a great supportable country by the people. And one of the things was not allowing that to happen. In the old days, misinformation campaigns were ran a very information campaigns. We didn't call them misinformation at that time. We called them information campaigns. Were designed a very specific way to support the United States of America. This is why the wives, when the husbands went overseas, were in airport creating bombs and creating planes. Everybody had no problem saying, oh, we're going to go to war. I'll go first. Because everything you read and everything you saw backed the fact that the United States was the good guy and this person was the bad guy. And though that may not be fully the case, it didn't matter to us because we wanted to believe we're the good guys. And we still do today. And there's nothing wrong with that. Unfortunately, that egoism is hurting too.
We're told so often how horrible the U.S. is. I mean, we're greedy, we're mean, we're ugly, we hate everybody, we hate children, we would put children in the streets,
because that's what they're being told.
I know.
Their misinformation campaigns go against us because, keep in mind, we were the first person to create the atomic bomb. I mean, the hydrogen bomb was designed by Germany, but we created the atomic bomb.
We barely,
but we were the first one to do it.
Yeah.
We were the first one to get to the moon. Barely, even though people want to say we didn't. You know what? I grew up with those astronauts. We did.
We did.
We were the first to conglomerate the business market and the international market for exchange.
Yes.
We succeeded in all of this because we believed at the time that if you put the proper morals and the proper goals in place and you showed people the right way, that everybody would follow. And that egoism. And at first they did start to follow, right? Everybody wanted peace. Everybody wanted love. Everybody should be...
prosperity.
Yeah, and prosperity.
Prosperity and
the right thing. And then it went sour because we let our guard down.
Yes.
And our own egoism that everybody was just going to follow us and it was going to be okay and we don't have to force it on people, became hated by people because we were stronger than them, we were smarter than them, we were faster than them, we were making more money than them. And our ego believed we were when we actually weren't. In the background, these countries were looking to be smarter, faster, and greater. And they became smarter, faster, and greater.
Yeah. And it's coming back to bite us in the butt, too.
And it's coming back to bite us in our ass. That's why I tell people a lot of times, everybody says America is the greatest place in the world. And compared to a lot of places we are. We have the freedom to drive out whenever we want, get whatever we want, spend whatever we want, be whoever we want. That's awesome. There are other countries that limit that incredibly. But we're also not the best country in the world because right now, our education is 37% below every nation.
Yep.
Our kids are dumber than a rock. And that's just one example.
Well, it's because even with the television being used as a babysitter, it's not Sesame Street and the electric company anymore. It's stuff that just mind numbs them.
Well, and when you have a more liberal idealistic system at the time, teaching people freedom of art and not education as an example, which up here they do, and the children should be able to make their own personal decisions and not enforcing education more, they become dumb.
Well, you have to have that background.
You have to have a background to build. And you add that on top of the fact that we are 52%, a minimum of 52% higher in natural occurring disease and disability than the rest of the world, meaning we are sicker than every other nation in the world.
Yep.
as an example, we're not the greatest country in the world. We just have some advantages other people don't, and we believe in our country more than most people do. And there's nothing wrong with that. My patriotism will always be for the United States of America. I would die for it.
Yeah. Well, you signed that line.
But we should also understand that we can improve on it and we can make it better. And at one point we were there. We were well into the acceptance phase before all this bullshit of everybody. I didn't care who you were. I'd still treat you as a human being until all of this racial nonsense and other crap surfaced again. There's just no need for all of that.
Well, if you're creating all this hate and anger and
Misinformation.
Yeah. Well, not all of that is misinformation. Because
but all you have to do is poke the points.
Yes.
And misinformation in the right areas poking the points causes groups to form. And then the groups become more aggressive. And then you control the groups and you lead the groups in the right direction. And now you've caused a chaotic moment.
Yes.
And we saw that with Antifa and Black Lives Matter.
Antifa was horrible.
Yeah. Oh, Antifa was awful.
Yes.
Then what do they call it? The TLG, the transgender liberal group. And then the LLG, the lesbian liberal group, which most people don't know about. By the way, both of those groups are very highly dangerous. The TLG actually were creating bombs and arrested by the FBI in the past 3 years, just so you guys know.
Oh, wow. I did not know that.
Yeah. So there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes that most people don't know because they were concentrating on this ridiculous liberal war and anti-liberal war and the FBI is wrong and the CIA is wrong and blah, 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 blah. But yeah, believe it or not, even though the FBI was weaponized in a lot of areas, they also defended your ass a lot of times. They took down the LLG. They took down the transgender liberal group. They took down several other groups that were basically planning to attack the shit out of us on soil.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's their job.
I read, and I didn't know that.
It's their job. They just don't make it public knowledge a lot of times. And
well, do you think that there is a way, because a lot of people feel, and sometimes I do too, that the genie is out of the box on all this, if you're not like me, I hate you. If you're not like me, then obviously you're against everything I stand for. If you're not like me, then I have to work and make you be like me because you can't possibly be happy and live a good life if you're not exactly like me.
I think social media has painted it that way from all these campaigns.
Well,
and I think a lot of
what I'm saying is, can that genie go back in the bottle?
It's going to take a lot of years. But there was a question when you ask yourself when you do your research, ask yourself the same question as, did anybody ask that when we were dead set against Martin Luther King wanting, excuse my term when I say this because it's terrible to say it, wanting Negroes to have rights? They said, could that genie ever go back in the box? Are people ever going to accept that? They did. We allowed them to have rights. When the first woman wanted the freedom of being able to choose instead of being treated like a secretary and a mom, everybody asked the same question, and there were riots on the streets.
There were.
But we did accept it, and the genie went back in the box, and now I know women corporate advisors that make billions of dollars a year.
As they should.
As they should.
Yes.
So I think yes, but it's going to take everybody to understand the one thing that makes America different than most countries is we work through these issues, and eventually we start to register how wrong they are, no matter how right we thought they were in the first place. It's not that we were any better or any worse than anybody else. It's just the conglomeration understood that, maybe you really shouldn't go out burning crosses in front of these people's yards. They're not bad people. And maybe they should have the same rights we have. But before that, we're human too. And humans do bad things. We always have.
Humans do terrible things to each other. And that is, you're right, it is historical. And I do want to say hi to Krista Cesare, who, yes, I got it right. But he said, what a great and appropriate discussion. And I feel like it is too. And this is not necessarily where I thought that this was going to go, but I'm loving every minute of it. And Raymond is welcome to chat too. And, you know, when there's a lot more militant anti-Americanism than I've ever seen. And I grew up in the 60s. And, you know, it's one of those things that, are we in a position where so much of our younger generation is so anti-American?
Yes.
I mean, it's a huge segment of the population.
They don't care about America. They don't have. When I grew up, you were just taught, if we go to war tomorrow, will you enlist? And the answer was yes.
Yeah.
They don't care. They just don't care. And they're tired of hearing about it, because at school, they're being taught this is okay, and 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 this is okay. At home, they're being taught this is not okay. This is wrong. And then they're watching this stupid misinformation campaign put us against each other.
Yeah.
And mom and dad gripe about this and gripe about that. So they don't know where to go, and they have no leader teaching them how to go. So they've just forgot about it all and say, screw it. And they don't really like patriotism, and they don't really like government, and they don't really like any of it, and they don't want to talk about it.
And they sure don't like self-sacrifice.
Nope. And they're lazy because we've built them that way. They're on their phone all day long, and they're playing video games all day long. And if America were to fall tomorrow, 90% of our children have no idea how to raise crops, survive, hunt, fish, and do the basics. All they know how to do is get on the phone and find out what happened.
Which will be an interesting thing, especially if we have one of those pulses, right?
Yeah.
You know, that's actually a good point, because nothing, unless you have a relative, an older relative, that's going to teach you basic survival skills, the only choice people would have would be to depend on a government. Yet if we were in that situation, if there were no communication, which, I mean, I'm serious, a pulse can do that. You know, there are no computers, no communications, as far as, you know.
I'm actually going to, my new show coming out is going to show you a little bit about that, by the way. We've been licensed to do so in Ohio. We're actually going to create a small EMP bomb, and we're going to set it off in a field. Now, this will only go a half a mile in every direction, but it shows you how simple it is to set one of these off. It also shows you how complicated it is, because you're talking about a $120 billion affair to get one that goes off that'll take out a whole nation. Nonetheless, you can still, this is what the concern is with the drones, getting back onto the drones. To take out the United States of America, there's several key things that you would have to do. The first thing is you have to take out the transit routes, right?
Mm-hmm.
If we can't get anything, we don't survive. And then you have to take out the electric, the power, and the communications. Now, in the old days, that meant dropping people in. Only takes 2 people to take out the electric and power sources in every area. But the 2 people still have to be covert enough to get in, figure out how to get through it, set the bombs, set the systems off, and then we can come in, right? You don't have to do that with a drone.
Nope.
All you got to do is point, aim, and go.
That's why people are so freaked out about these drones.
I
mean,
and it should be a concern. In this case, it's not a concern, but it was addressed with the United States government. The FBI director, the ex-FBI director now, but he still did address that and say, hey, look, you need to address this. Several CIA advisors, several Department of Defense advisors addressed it in the Senate hearings, and they all said the same thing, and that is, regardless of whether these are harmful or not, now that it's been brought to the attention of the public, this is what you need to know, and this is what you do need to look at, and this is what we need to increase.
What did they think was going to happen if you're over the Jersey Shore with 50 freaking drones? I mean, hello. You better believe that those people are going to come out their door and say something.
Well, you know what surprises me?
What?
And maybe that's why, even though they say it's coming to Ohio, it never happened. How come there wasn't one of them damn hillbillies trying to shoot it down?
I know. And what was so funny You didn't see them down here. What was
And
that? Somebody.
I haven't seen a one of more report in Ohio. I've seen a couple of false reports, but I know why too, because if you fly over here, we got one of the largest militias in the whole United States, and I guarantee you, most of them are hillbillies, and they're going to start shooting.
Well, one of the girls, there was a meme that was like, "You don't see them in Georgia because if we see one of those things, we're taking it down and stripping the copper."
Yeah.
I'm like, "Oh yeah, okay." But they are Jersey, New York. They are in Ohio, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, Florida, California, and Virginia.
They claim.
They claim.
There hasn't been a drone over Ohio.
Okay, I'll take you at your word because I know you do your research and I trust you.
There's been spottings of claimed drones, but we have all kinds of sizes of drones being used. Wright-Patterson Air Force Base launches their own drones on a regular basis.
They shut down.
That you know of.
Well, it was reported, yeah. But it says they closed their airspace because
they closed their airspace down. They also disseminated about 189 staff members because it's just not being used anymore. But there are still.
Well, this was not for the whole day. This wasn't forever. That was just for the day of that.
They actually did. They shut down a good percentage of the Air Force Base in the past 3 years, which is what I thought you were talking about. But yes, they shut down during this claim. They shut down for 2 days.
Okay.
And we were on high alert for 2 days here in Ohio because we were told they were coming here.
Right.
But then the high alert pretty much went bye-bye. Yeah, went bye-bye because then we got some disclosures and we got a couple other things that said, hey, guys, this is what's going on. And just so you guys know, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base has experimental drone technology in it. And part of the reason Ohio is a high UFO sighting place is because we have a test facility in Mansfield. We have a test facility at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And we have another test facility I can't tell you about. And all of that is designed in aerial warfare. So it's not uncommon to go outside and look in your sky. And if you have clear stars, see these little lights going up and down and back and forth and flying against each other and thinking it's a UFO. It's just not uncommon.
Well, I'll tell you that the drones lights turning off.
Uh-huh.
Why would that happen?
To not alert something on the ground you're looking for?
But they were already.
I can actually say that.
Okay. But I mean, because it was almost like they were responding to the people that were in the air with them, trying to ascertain what they were.
To an extent, you can do that. And that as long as the FCC knows roughly where you are is fine. The other thing you have to think about is, let's look at it this way. Let's say I have a high target. Let's say I know there is a big drug deal going on in this small area with some highly aggressive drug lords. And it's right in the center of your town. And you don't know what's going on. And I want to shut it down, right? And I can spot this to see if it's going to be a danger with a drone. But they can also see me. Now, if I shut those lights down, they can't see me and I can still see them. And I can keep track of things and I'll be able to secure the area and know where to cut off and where you can go and so forth. So there's scenario one. Scenario two is if I'm looking for something highly sensitive and you see the drone and you can't explain it, like we've noticed, and I think if the military is involved, they should have thought this one through. It was a really dumbass move. The public is going to react, right?
Yes.
And if I'm looking for something highly sensitive in that process and you spot me, then the thing I'm looking for may spot me too. So I have to shut down immediately. So you can't see me anymore. Now, when you put this type of scenario in a highly populated area, it's downright stupid to not think you're going to have panic.
Yeah.
So I think those issues, once you start realizing what truly is going on here, should be addressed. And I think the Senate and the House and the senators know that. I think they are going to address it. They've already started. But if that kind of plays the scenarios out to you, why would you do that? Well, when I'm looking for something, I don't want it looking for me.
No.
And if you spot it before I spot it, then it could cause a problem. If you spot me before I spot it, it could cause a problem. So the best way to do it at that point is to just shut down.
Just go dark.
Now nobody can see me.
Well, that's something that I was so curious about too, because there were reports that there were choppers or some aerial craft in the air with these, and they hit it with a light and their lights went out. Not and the drone lights went out. And I was like, well, okay, but if you were hitting it with a light, could you not still see it? And
depends on the reflective technology.
Okay.
We literally
you would still see a dark spot.
You would when you got close enough. But we literally have planes where in the dark with the reflective metal technology and the paint that we have, to where you're not going to see it when the light goes on it. Until you get close enough to know that physical unit. It's almost like the cloaking device that Captain Kirk had.
Gotcha.
You see that one movie, I can't remember that one Star Trek movie where somebody's jogging and they run right up on it and hit it.
Yes.
Well, it's kind of almost...
that was the one with the whales.
I think it was, yeah. It's almost kind of the same way in the dark here. The technology is so dark, it's beyond our first spy plane that we're used to seeing, that if you turn off all the lights, you're not going to see it until you're right up on it. You could literally smack right into it before you know it's there.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So...
I have to say that kudos to Star Trek for half the crap that I have sitting around my desk and in my purse and all of the things like that, because it was so before its time.
If it wasn't for Star Trek, we wouldn't have flip phones. We probably wouldn't have had cell phones as early. We wouldn't have interactive computer systems that we have now with voice interaction. All of this was thought through them. And science was too.
Yeah.
They were always cutting edge.
I always say that Roddenberry was getting downloads the whole time.
It makes you wonder sometimes, because even when he retired and they get into the next generation used so much science that wasn't physically known yet.
I know.
That you're like, how did they get a hold of that when it wasn't even released yet?
They probably went and talked to the people that made those same designs on the little guys in Egypt in the pyramids, right?
Yeah.
The ones that were carrying a tricorder with them and such. Yeah. I mean, I love stuff like that.
The history of aliens fascinates me. I will say that. It's when people ask me, do you believe if aliens exist? I always give a canned statement, and that is, we'd be naive to think that in a universe that's ever expanding, there's not something as intelligent, if not more intelligent than us. And we'd also be naive to believe that it hasn't visited here somewhere along the line.
That's pretty much my canned statement too.
Because it's true. But I am fascinated with the hieroglyphs and the history of what confirms that. Because there are some very specific hieroglyphs and historical markers that you can go, yeah, there's no mistaking that. That's a UFO.
Yeah. I mean, seriously. And and there's also the architecture that has actually been lost to jungles. And when the first time that I ever heard Eric Von Daniken talk, he was talking about when he was a young man, between 17 to 22, right in that period, and he would work as a waiter and go adventure. Spend all his money, come back, work as a waiter, and go adventure. And when he went to Peru, Nazca, and flew over the Nazca lines coming in to where he was going, and and there were thousands of them, much more than what are there now. And I was just like, tell me more, right? Because that was, to him, that was kind of like, okay, I made these for somebody to see. When I'm on the ground, I can't see them. I had to be in the plane to see them.
And isn't it ironic that a lot of those look like airstrips?
Maybe ironic. Yeah.
You know, I always mention
Telling.
that, but a lot of those look like roads and airstrips, as if a civilization before us designed the same things we build now.
Mhm. Everything old is new again.
And it also brings you back to the Battlestar Galactica belief and a lot of other things. As crazy because I'm a big sci-fi buff, and I
Yeah.
love the theory of Battlestar Galactica, which uses that everything that was will be again, and
Mhm.
that the reason we have some of these beliefs is because we're a lost planet from a race that made it here
Yes.
long before us. But imagine the possibility that all of this was because something before us lived just like we did and wiped themselves out just like we will eventually.
Yeah.
And then somewhere along the line, billions of years from now, there's going to be another intelligent life form that's basically like us, looking at all of our leftover lines
Yeah.
and wondering what we did.
And enjoying all our microplastics, right? So that's something that freaks me out too. I hope that somebody gets control over our food industry. But I was going to say, oh, it was interesting because April pointed out back when we were discussing kids that they use the scouts and all of them are into it. But she also said they saw three planes, thank you, three planes fly over us here in October, and they had blue round lights on the bottom of them and not the red and green lights. And they were
different
different.
sizes.
Yeah.
2
So
small lights and a large light, if I had to guess.
blue.
Yep. If they were military, obviously you know that certain colors of lights are used for communication, right? So the FCC and everybody knows who you are: yellow lights, red lights, blue lights, and so forth. But there are also specific lights that are designed for specific situations and scenarios. Blue lights pick up and detect specific things, and the military does use those in rare occasions. I don't know if the public knows that much or not, but it's something that most military officials know if they've ever been on planes. But
What do they pick up?
certain spectrums of light
Oh, okay.
and signatures, so it's not uncommon to use them. And they're a low class spotlight as well. So I can use a blue light in the middle of the night as an example, and it doesn't interfere with your vision of light. So I can still spotlight a large blue light on the ground, and it doesn't affect you.
Okay.
Most people don't even notice it's there. So it's very common to use alternate color lights for spotlights when you're flying over, and you can still get in the parameters of communication stating the plane is still here and search for whatever you want to do or do your test exercises or whatever else. I didn't know that at first. I had to start asking questions because I see crap like that here in Ohio all the time.
Okay.
They do low base maneuvers all over the state. So I once saw 2 helicopters and 2 planes that were using blue lights, and I dug into it. Why are these guys using only blue lights, and why are they flying so low in these fields? I was in that field, and it bugs me.
I need to know.
Yeah. And it took months to figure it out, and I finally had a military advisor go, okay, Chris, this is why.
Okay.
I'm like, well, that makes sense. That's all I wanted to know. Thanks. Let it go.
Sometimes all you need is just that little,
Yeah.
because I'll see stuff, because you know me, I'm going to go ask, right? And I was doing something one day and I had the opportunity to ask a guy that I was working with on one of his projects. And I was like, what is this? Why does this happen? And whose team is it on? And he looked at me, he's like, I can't talk to you about that. And I'm like, well, yeah, you can. I pay your salary. I'm a citizen. He was like, that's not how that works. He was right.
Well, you know you're on the right. You know you're on the right path when you get to that point to where they won't tell you squat. It's when they
Yes.
tell you everything, it's like, okay, well, obviously you're telling me that. So, but when it gets to that point to where they're either saying, I can't tell you or shut up.
Yeah. Oh, I asked somebody in who was a military person. They had just ostensibly come out. Okay. And so I was like, so are you disclosure or disinformation? And he just looked at me and turned really, really red and just said, I would never betray my country. And I was
Well,
like, I wasn't
he answered
asking you
your question.
to. Yeah.
I'm disinformation.
And what's interesting is that is a very, very nice person. And it was something that I don't think was ever expected. Right? That was not a question he ever expected. And I asked in public.
It's a valid question, though,
It was a
especially if
valid
you're in
question.
public eye, if you've been on
Yeah.
TV, if you go to these conferences.
Yep.
Look, are you this or that? Now, you're
Yeah.
not allowed to answer that information.
No.
Unless you're a wackadoo that we use. And there are a few wackadoos that have been fed disinformation from other people.
Yes.
But most of the time you're going to get that canned statement. You're going to get, I would never betray my government or my people.
Yeah. Well, his was, I would never betray my oath.
And that answers your question.
Yeah.
And,
that person is very much in the public eye.
Of course he is.
He's
been on major TV shows probably. And
yeah, he is. He's a lead on a show.
Yeah, he knows the gig, especially if he's worked for the military.
Yeah, and he's brilliant. So,
and that doesn't mean these guys, so you guys know, are bad people. I've met a lot of these people. They're awesome people. Watch their shows if you see them. They're great.
Yeah.
They're great at what they do.
And they have a genuine interest.
Oh, yeah, they do. They have a genuine interest a lot of times. But if they get a phone call tomorrow saying, say this and don't say that, that's exactly what they're going to do.
Because that's what their government is telling them to do.
Because that's what you're supposed to do.
Yep. And that's who they took the oath to.
Mm-hmm. And I agree to that to a certain point. I took an oath too. There's certain things I can say and certain things I can't say. What I've said today is sitting right here on a piece of paper. I've been told I'm allowed to say it.
Yeah.
And if asked the wrong questions, I would give the same canned statement to Kat. It's not that I don't like Kat. It's just that I'm not allowed to say it because I'll go to jail.
And it's because Kat would absolutely understand that. Because Kat is a patriot. So I really am. I grew up that way. I grew up with, we're talking about generational behaviors and such. Well, my grandpa was in the military, but nobody believed him because he never whipped his papers out to show somebody or, whatever. And so, this is the man that if I spent the night at their house, every morning, they had a flag on outside their front door. And every morning we would say the Pledge of Allegiance. And if it was a holiday, a national holiday, it was a lot of fun, right? It was just, we sang Star Spangled Banner and we did all this other fun stuff. And, to me, it was fun. My dad was the Green Beret Special Forces, 182nd Airborne.
I grew up with a lot of that. My dad was in Vietnam. My uncle was.
My dad did not go.
In the United States military. He fought in Germany, my uncle and my great uncle. I've had many friends that were in the 101st and several other infantries.
That's a great
I broke my leg, so I couldn't do that. So I ended up in independent contracting a lot later and working with the government on misinformation campaigns and several other situations. And I'm a patriot. I signed the oath just like everybody else. I've worked with many different departments, but some top security, some not so top security. I spent 2 years in child trafficking and just keeping track of making sure the files got on the right desk for the FBI just so that they could look at missing persons cases for young children.
That is such a horrible thing. I'm glad
it's a sad thing.
It is a sad thing, and that's one of my biggest problems with our immigration situation that we have now is that there's so many children and they were just given away
Mhm.
to whoever would take them.
Well, it gets a lot worse than that.
It is a lot worse than that because the people that took them did not have good intent.
Donald Trump is issuing a new, if everything works right, and I believe it's going to work right, because I've been in contact. I'm a little crooked here, but that's okay. You can still see my face. What they call, then this might change the name, but the ICC, which is supposed to work with ICE when he reinitiates it, which is Immigration Control Committees. It's managed state by state. I am a part of the Immigration Control Committee here in Ohio. And I've had the great unprivilege of preparing for this job for the past 3 months in case it happens. And now it's not just me. I'm not in a massive role. You're not going to see Chris on a bunch of politic blah, 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 blahs with the suit and all this other stuff. I'm one of many people that are going to be in these departments. Our job is basically to be the decision makers for ICE so that they don't look like the bad guys, right? You have to have a social services department for everybody, correct?
Right.
So I had the privilege of going into some of these camps in Ohio, and there's a lot more than people think. And it's a very sad and terrible environment, and it needs to stop.
What are
Farmers
the
are getting. We have 20, 30,000 immigrants in the state of Ohio I wasn't aware of. At first, it was 2,000 or 3,000, but we have over 20,000 immigrants in the state of Ohio. And they're taking over city blocks. They're taking over farm fields. They're taking over massive areas. And they were allowed to do it by the Democratic government. Some of them have built houses on land and just declared it their land. Believe it or not. Funded by the Democratic government.
Is that... Go ahead.
Oh, no, you're fine. You can ask any questions. It's just when I started to get into it and started to realize this and visited some of these areas, I was like, this is a big deal.
It is a big deal.
Because these people are basically doing what they want on our land.
Well, with no repercussions and nobody to say, this is wrong, you can't do that.
Yeah. And then getting released from systems when they do get caught.
Yeah.
Somalians were on national park land shooting birds that were on the National Reserve list as not able to be shot at and eating them. And they got arrested for it. They got told they couldn't do it. And then they got kicked right back out of the jail and didn't even go through a court system the next week. I mean, they
That
were
would
on
never happen to me. If that were me, I would be in prison for letting the National Endangered Wildlife Act.
Yeah, but they didn't because they
Wow.
didn't understand, so it's okay. And that's just one example here. It's just there are some immigrants that deserve to be here and they want to be here, and there's a bunch of them that just took advantage of that free border system and they came in, and then New York shipped them over here, and another state shipped them over here, and now states like us are flooded with people that we don't want.
And that don't have a right to be there.
Mhm.
And, that's one of the things that out of all the things that I might not agree with, that horrifies me. Because, they had Chinese nationals coming into the U.S. across our border, and everybody's like, oh, well, that was not. I was like, yeah, that was a real thing.
Yeah, it was a real
And
thing.
they were not young men, but they were obviously incredibly fit, and women, and primarily men. But they had just been hiking from Central America to get here and looked like that. That was not true. And
it's not just that.
Yeah.
If you catch some of those camera stuff that I think Biden's office pulled a lot of it, you're talking about Israel military. You're talking about Mexican, Colombian militaries.
Yeah.
All crossing our borders on a regular basis. And you can tell by looking at them because they're well armed. They're not just walking like
Well, they're well armed, but they're also incredibly fit.
fit. and well
And-
off, and
and
you know,
they have not been walking in terrible conditions for a month. You know, and it's incredible to me that nobody has tried to stop this at all, and in fact have been encouraging it. But my main thing still is those hundreds of thousands of children.
Oh yeah, they
I mean,
they just disappear. They just literally disappear, and there's nothing
Yeah.
we can do about it because what we did have in place was stripped.
yeah,
So at least when you were checking in the right channels, it may look terrible because yes, in the integration and interrogation area, there were caged areas where you had to sit for 24 hours, and it looks awful. But it really wasn't that
it's
awful.
our bad, but it's
Most of these people actually got shipped off to real hotel rooms and real housing and real everything within a very short period of time. When you take most of that away and just say, "Sure, come on over," then you have a bunch of young children and women, especially young children that are women, that get advantage taken care of them, and then they just disappear, and we get blamed for it.
Yeah.
In the long run.
And trafficking is so real. I mean, it's really before this. Okay, before all of this started happening on our Gulf Coast, there were people that were being trafficked. And it was something that I became aware of just by inadvertently seeing a situation. And I was just so blown away.
Uh-huh.
And so now, when you have kids still come, they're unaccompanied.
Most people don't understand, and I learned this when I was actually there. Now this number has lowered, but because it's been at least 11 years since I've been a part of that. But at one point 11 years ago, 27% of missing children in the United States of America is because of illegal child trafficking. That means that 27% of the children that disappeared did not disappear on their own accord. They were abducted and used in child trafficking situations here in the United States. That's a scary thing.
It is a scary thing. And, people talk all the time. You can't go into, like in Vegas, in the restrooms of the women's rooms. It's if you need help. And it's in several languages. If you need help, there are people to help you.
Mhm.
And, there's all these ways to communicate that. And, women share those, like the hand signs and stuff, because sadly it's the younger females that seem to have that happen. But I just am so astounded that I've got a soapbox under my feet. I'll step off of it now.
Well, it's a major, it's a serious situation that most people aren't aware of.
It's shocking. It's shocking that here in this country, where people came seeking a better life, that these women and children of both genders, were just let in and just given to people that had nefarious intent. And nobody tried to stop that.
And some of those people are here in the United States of America, and they're actually United States citizens.
Yes. Yes.
And it's a terrible and awful thing to think about. Well, that's why I tell people, we aren't the perfect country. No matter how much we try.
No place is perfect.
We do have our flaws, and one of our flaws is the rich love to get away with bloody murder. And that should be looked into as well. I think it is now a little bit. I think people are starting to realize, even though you got to go through all the nonsense there, misinformation as well, that the rich in Hollywood and Beverly Hills and all these other places have a very bad underbelly. They just cover it up a lot better than most other countries.
I would agree. And, well, it's not just there.
No.
I mean, it's any place. It doesn't matter where you are. there's always going to be an underbelly of society that, you can be rich, you can be beautiful, you can be whatever, but your inside can be rotted out too.
Well, society has built us that way, and social media has built us that way.
Yeah.
It used to be when I started my career a long time ago that a human being, and this was a true fact, a human being would run across one serial killer within their lifetime and never know it. Do you know that's increased to the number 3 now? That every human being will run across 3 serial killers in their life and never know it. That's true
Be
mathematics.
thankful they don't know it.
That's
Wow.
a scary situation.
That's incredible.
Yeah, and if you think about that's not only scary, it also shows where our psyche has became, because we're falling apart because we rely on social media and we rely on phones and we rely on technology and we rely on misinformation, and it's driving us batshit nuts.
It is. And speaking of, getting back to good things, but Melinda in chat is a friend of mine from Scotland.
Oh,
And so this
I love
is
Scotland, by the way, Melinda. I think it's a wonderful country.
I love
Beautiful.
it too.
I got lost there for 2 years.
Lucky you. The longest I've gotten to be there is a little around 3 weeks. So, but she's coming to the U.S. hopefully this year. So
Cool.
we're going to get to hook up again. But, but I will say that I adore Scotland. I really do. I'm so lucky you for a couple of years. I could see that. But my husband, however, does not see a couple of years of us in Scotland. So there's that. But I think that Chris says that, it can be a scary world at times. And it's just so wild, really. I did not know that you lived in the U.S. Sorry, guys, sidetrack. but Chris said it can be a scary world at times, and darn right it can. And I am stunned by I'm going to run across 3 serial killers in my life. I probably know who one of them already was, but and I'm old.
I'm sorry. You got me.
I knew it. I knew it all along. But how on earth do you see this getting turned around?
A lot of hard effort. The United States of America has to get their patriotism back. You have to understand the good things in order to realize that those small things that we're all stressed out about, we all hate it, we all gripe about it, we all got angry, we dealt with COVID, we dealt with this, we dealt with that. We could talk about that all day long. But how many of you people will talk about the patriotism involved in that? As an example, we spent over a year and a half in isolation, yet Americans still sung outside their doorways to each other. Yeah. They put together food banks outside their doors so that you didn't starve. Medical supplies were handed door to door by people that shouldn't. Even myself, believe it or not, worked with a television star's wife illegally transporting masks we weren't allowed to give people through trucks across 3 states. And this is patriotism. This is believing in your people and your country. We will get through this because we love each other and we believe in this country. Yeah, you're always going to have that politician that's an asshole, and you're always going to have that dickhead that's filthy rich, and you're always going to have all this other stuff. We've had that the whole time.
We just had that from our inception.
Yeah, we just didn't know it because we weren't looking at our TV screen every day and our phone screen every day. So how do we bounce back from this? We bounce back together. We've already taken the first step. We all decided, and it was a group effort. We've had enough and voted in somebody we want. Hopefully he does good. I believe
from your mouth to God's ear.
I believe he will, but I'm just one American. I could be totally wrong. But we finally came together as a group and said, we've had enough. We want this. Screw you. Now let's keep that pace up. And let's believe in each other. If we believe in each other, we're going to succeed. That's what America was founded on. That's who we are. No matter how hard it gets bad, we're still here for each other.
Yes. I was actually really impressed myself during COVID. And, you know, my husband was a small business owner, and he went to work every day because we make things that are, a lot of our clients do necessary work, and we provide stuff for them. And so he was, you know,
I'm
there
not gonna lie.
every day.
I went broke. I had
Yeah.
3-4 medical clinics. You can't get the doctors to come in. Of course, obviously that's how all of this web doctor stuff got legal eventually. But I had to shut down all the clinics. I was out of work. I
Oh,
went to work
wow.
for the government for information on COVID-19 so that I could get a salary.
Yeah.
And I was making sure the proper emails here in Ohio, because we were leading the chase at the beginning, went to the doctor and went to DeWine and so forth, and got paid there eventually. And then I took all of my resources and put it into, look, if I'm not going to make a lot of money here and I'm going to be stuck at home, we got to figure out how to help people.
Yeah.
So that's exactly what I did. I went to food banks and donated $500-600 worth of my paycheck that I didn't have. When I got approved with all the business loans that eventually I had to fight about because they screwed up so bad.
Oh,
But
wow.
I had restarted my business with the idealism of helping people, and utilized most of that money to help people. Still do. I just don't talk about it a lot. I mean,
Yeah.
but the idealism was, we as America should be able to get through this as a people, and we got to do everything we can. Even during that period in time, I didn't talk about all the negative until I had to.
Yeah.
Everything I posted on my social media was positive. Hey guys, don't pay attention to this. How about this? I knew a 12-year-old child that built a food donation box and put it in downtown Mount Gilead and forced his mom to drive up there every week and put bread and necessities in there so that poor people could have things.
What an amazing family.
Yeah. And those are the things we need to concentrate on. When America comes together, we
is.
do it well.
Because we are a society, and you know, the pitting each other against each other over ideologies, I mean, we're bigger than that. We are, oh my gosh, we've got such a history of overcoming, and I hope that somehow the conditioning that's happening now lessens.
I think
Because,
it's starting to. I think people are starting to realize that social media and artificial intelligence and misinformation has got to a point to where it can take down societies. I think the United States is a prime example of this.
I would agree.
And I think Americans in the United States are starting to realize this. The biggest problem with us as Americans is, again, that egoism. We feel we're unstoppable, so we're unstoppable. The
Right.
first time we learned we weren't unstoppable was September 11th. And now this is the next thing, which is even bigger, where we realized, hey, you know what? Maybe we need to take 3 steps back. We need to concentrate on ourselves, and we need to realize our idealisms are great, but if we can't defend those idealisms, then they don't matter to anything. We're going to fall anyway.
I'm going to let you handle that question.
Do I believe that the division of our country is by design? Yes,
Yes.
I do. In fact, I can prove that. Eisenhower put together a think tank, and one of the things, there were 175 things in this think tank, by the way, all kinds of scenarios, from aliens to what happens if poop takes over the world. But some of it was ridiculous. But one of those think tanks was how to take down a government through misinformation and technology, and the ability to do so very quickly and very easily. Ironically, about 72% of that, if you can get your hands on it, has been used in detail and worked. The only way that can happen is if somebody designed that. The question is who and why. Now, it's very important in that process to understand from an intelligence standpoint that I can release to you from other channels is other governments have access to this stuff too, and they have also utilized things through Eisenhower's theory of bringing the most intelligent minds together and created an ability to do so way before now, and have done so, and were responsible for about 80 to 90% of the misinformation that destroyed us.
Well, Melinda also said China's 100-year plan.
Which ain't going to happen in 100 years now. It's going to happen in about 5 or 10.
Yep. It's amazing when you hand the tools for your own destruction to somebody that really wants to do that.
Yeah, and China's very adamant about it.
Well, they're not hiding it.
Z doesn't hide it at all. He tells you, and when he tells you, you better be ready, because he'll go on and address his whole nation and say, I'm going to do this to America. They can't do shit. That's why we can't see his broadcasts over there. It's not because China doesn't want us to see his broadcasts. It's because America doesn't allow you to watch them.
Yes.
And he does very clearly tell his government, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to do it in this period in time, and they can't do squat. And this shows you how powerful I am, so shut up and do what I say.
Always nice to have that little, mechanism in your pocket, I guess.
And sometimes when he does it, he's right. It happened right on key. Sometimes it's just blowing nonsense like every political leader. But sometimes when he says it, you're like, oh, you know what? He just said 3 weeks ago he was going to do this in this period of time, and we didn't pay attention to it, and it happened.
Yeah, it seems like people should pay attention when he speaks.
Oh, we should. It's just we have a lapsed government. For the past 4.5 years, we've had a lapsed government. A government that doesn't pay enough attention, a government that doesn't think these things are real, and a government that wants to line their pockets more than anything else.
Yeah. Yeah, you got to wonder how somebody, goes to Washington and gets a, $200,000 a year salary and comes home with multi-millions and all the properties that ever wanted to be on the beaches and the golf courses and everything else. And yet they were working for us.
Yeah.
I missed that.
But ironically, they're worth $30-40 million a year now or above.
Yeah.
And it kind of pisses me off, to be honest with you. $180,000 salary is what you're supposed to get, but your net worth in the first 2 years as a senator is $35 million.
Yeah, go figure, right?
Yeah. How exactly did you pull that off?
Show me.
And then you get a shut up.
Yeah. Well, and my response to the shut up is still show me. Because, and I will say that one of the funniest things that I've seen, and I love politics. I love real politics when they're actually, working and doing and whatever. But one of the funniest things that I've seen in decades was when Biden said, and you shouldn't be doing stock trades when you're in the government. If you're in the House, if you're in the Senate, no stock trading, because we know exactly where that was directed. And it was just like, oh, you are still in there. Yeah. Because sometimes,
yet he never once mentioned and shut everybody up, but expected everybody to talk about Donald Trump's investments and his mistakes in charities. Never once mentioned that Joe Biden, guys, so that you know, has been a part of 2 of the largest real estate scams in America. And out of those real estate scams, he got a house.
Yeah.
That he didn't have to pay for.
Yeah. We've seen it a lot. So, Melinda says that communism is imminent, the elite and the poverty level, no more middle class. And I think that the middle class is trying to come back right now. I feel like, we're kind of middle class.
In the United States, just so you guys know, every ism ends the same way. Socialism, communism, capitalism, it all ends the same way. No matter how hard you try to justify it, it all ends the same way. The rich are the rich and they control the poor.
And that's global.
And that's global, and it's always going to be that way no matter how you work at it. Now,
and it has always been that way.
What's the difference between America and other countries when it comes to this? Well, when it hits our doors, we will fight. Well, somewhere along the line, Americans will say, yeah, that ain't going to work for me, and I got a gun.
Which is why everybody wants them.
Which is why everybody wants them, and everybody wants the guns taken away immediately, because we will fight. And we have no problem with it. Yeah, that isn't what the Constitution says. I ain't good with that. I got a gun. Piss off.
Yeah.
Um,
So, Mark Addy, hey you. But it's really amazing to me that things got so out of hand
I'm
with
not
our government.
amazed. I'm not
I mean,
amazed with it.
well, I
If you
was, because I didn't think that it could happen in one term.
if you study history, and this really honestly, you just saw it in one term. We've been in collapse for
We have,
many
but I
years.
mean, the things that were
Um,
actually getting shoved.
it shows how quick social media misinformation can be used now compared to the old days to
Yes,
cause
yes.
that collapse. But society shows you how there's only two ways a power can grow and die. The first way is you grow in that power and you have an idealism and you force it on people. And eventually the people get tired and fight back.
Yeah.
The other one is your idealism is so just that you believe in it so strong that you get so high that you believe nobody can ever touch you because the idealism is right, and then you fall from it.
Yes.
We're in the second category. Our idealism, we believe, was so strong that it would never fall, and you just couldn't touch the United States of America, and we were wrong.
Well, yes. Yes.
So, and now the good news is we didn't fall like the Roman Empire and all the other empires yet, so maybe we can change this now that we understand, you know what? Our ego, our idealism is right, but our egoism was wrong, and maybe we can just mop it up and clean it up now and come to an agreement that works.
And just learn. And
Yeah, and learn from the mistake.
Yes. I mean, if you don't learn from them, you're going to keep making them. And we don't have a lot more room to give on making them.
No. And we're not the only country that needs to learn that lesson. If we
Absolutely not.
If we go down this road, history repeats itself. We're all going to wipe ourselves out and start over again.
Be starting again.
Yeah.
Better hope for some good aliens to show up because they're going to be seeding the planet.
Or at least come down at one point and just shut everything off and say, you know what, guys? No.
Yes. I'd be okay with that at this point. I mean, and there is Allie Merrill in chat, who is my baby. It says, how do we feel about the drones with the new laws? Even she has heard they're now in Maryland.
You're going to find these drones are going to span out to a couple other states. They're going to continue their search patterns. They are harmless, just so that you know. I can't tell you why I know this, but they are harmless. They should be a concern for you. You should always ask your questions. However, the search patterns are going to start to dissipate here, and they're going to start to increase overseas at this point. You're going to get your information on why, hopefully, when Donald Trump takes office, and you're going to understand why people were quiet. I can tell you that information. I can tell you that if you pay attention to your media, you will start seeing releases on how much we know about drone technology in the United States of America and how far advanced we are from other countries. You probably won't be told right off the bat the information exactly on why this has happened. But I hope you do. I hope they tell you, hey, look, this is why, because it's going to be a concern that opens your eyes a little bit. And it's going to also make you realize that that sometimes, even though you want the government to be the bad guy, they're not as bad as you think.
That's true.
But I wouldn't be as concerned as most people think. I was concerned at first until I dug in and got the information that I needed.
Well, I was concerned. And I was just like, oh my gosh. And when I put that question out there and you said, bring me on, I was like, I will. So, because I trust you and I know you do good stuff.
I can tell everybody things are under control. Okay. I know a lot of people going, yeah, he said the government said this,
to the man behind the curtain.
Yeah, and they know more than they do. They do know more than you know. And it's not quite what you think, but it is still a concern that they had to address for your safety. And they have addressed it, and they may very well have saved your life because of it.
I'm good with that.
And you should not be alarmed at all. It is not an invasion from another country. It is not something where you're going to see drones flying out of the sky and shooting at you and killing you. It is not an alien invasion. It is not a
I was really
political
pulling for
invasion.
the aliens at this point. So
It is something eventually, yes, that I think they should tell you, and it is a danger that was a big concern. And I believe that in that process, they did what they had to do. Unfortunately, when you're doing that, you should have probably thought about it a little bit more because it is going to scare the shit out of people.
it did. All those poor people on the Jersey Shore. So I am just, I'm so appreciative of you. Thank you for being here. And tell people where to find you right quick because we're about out of time.
Well, Born TV every Saturday, which is also on Darker Realm, I think, is it? Dark Realm
Dark
TV?
Realm TV.
Dark Realm TV, which is also replayed on Dark Realm TV. I have my own talk show. You're welcome to join. I'm actually going to have an 800 number attached to it later on this year. You can call into the show if you want to. So make sure that you do that as well. On top of that, I have a couple of new projects that are coming out. The first project is it's called Reality and You. I'm probably going to change that name around a little bit, but it's a podcast that's going to go on that TV and it's going to go on Born TV. And basically it's about a 30-minute skit that kind of debunks a lot of this stuff, conspiracy theories and so forth. We're going to create an EMP bomb as an example. We're going to look into EMF with the paranormal. We're going to do a lot of other things so that you understand what we're told sometimes and what we believe in these conspiracies and the cost involved in actually doing them means, yeah, it doesn't exactly work that way. And pay attention to Discovery Channel because I've got 6 episodes coming up next year on Discovery and History Channel that you'll see my delightful little face pissing a lot of people off in the paranormal.
You would never do that. What are you talking about? Thank you, Chris. I am just thrilled to have you on. And for everyone listening, y'all are the reason we do these shows. Make sure that you catch Chris's Paranormal and
No BS is on right now. Paranormal Reality will be coming out. And then there's a couple other things we're going to be doing too. So
check them out and find them on Facebook. Going to have social media. You might as well use it for the cool stuff. So thank you again, everyone. Good night. We'll see you same time, same cat channel next week. Good night and Merry Christmas.